Welcome to Dominion Ministries. I'm Ben. Glad you joined me today. In Luke chapter 2, it says, "In those days a decree went forth from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered." This took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And Mary and Joseph, head to Bethlehem because he was of the house and lineage of David. And so he goes to be registered there. And that's where I want to focus in our thoughts for this moment. Caesar Augustus makes a decree that the entire world needs to be registered, the entirety of the Roman Empire. So wherever your family originates from, that's where you need to go and back to and be registered. So the whole Roman Empire has been disrupted, and people are traveling all over the place to get where they need to go to register who they are and where they came from, and this is like, if this happened in the days of the United States, there'd be lawsuits and people complaining about government overreach and invasion of who needs to know who my family is and where we came from, right? These invasions of privacy, etc. But I want to focus on a few thoughts today. Number one is Caesar makes a decree. Governments and human governments and mankind make plots and schemes and plans that always play right into the divine plan of God. Caesar thought he was registering the entirety of the empire. He's the man. It's going to help him keep control and a lid on things around the empire. But what he doesn't know is his decree is getting Joseph and Mary to Bethlehem because Messiah is going to be born. And Messiah has to be born in Bethlehem. Well, Mary and Joseph, they lived way up north in Nazareth. And they're way, way, way far away from where they're supposed to be. Not because they were, supposed to be regarding, because God hadn't told them anything. They were just living their lives. They were regular people. But God went through great lengths to make sure that this young couple got exactly where they needed to be and where he needed them for Messiah to be born. And my friends, God will go through great lengths to accomplish the promises and purposes that he has, including using corrupt, wicked human government. Washington, D.C. can propose and plan and scheme against the Lord and against its citizens, but it's playing right into God's supernatural purposes and plans. That's an amazing thing. That this massive corrupt government of the Roman Empire, massive overreach, bloodthirsty, power-hungry, oppressive, was just a pawn in God's supernatural scheme and plan to save humanity from its sin. See, God will use wicked governments to do wicked things, but uses that as a way and God isn't the author of evil. Don't get me wrong. God does not stand with evil governments and their evil schemes, but these horrible, wicked things happen that men plot against one another and plot against God. And it always plays into God's supernatural purposes. That, like Joseph said, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And so we can take heart that whatever the government is doing, what other things that people are plotting and planning against you, against me, against us as people, against our nation, against our churches, etc., is all playing into God's supernatural purposes and plans. That the people who are out to get you right now are walking right into God's trap, walking right into God's supernatural purpose, and they don't even realize it. In fact, it says, Paul writes this, he goes, had they understood what they were doing, they never would have crucified the Lord of glory. If the enemy truly understood that the crucifixion was God's plan, see, we have the benefit of looking back at prophecy and seeing how it fulfills but when we look at many things, and in fact, when we get prophetic things, I believe in the prophetic gift is still in operation today. It does not supersede the Bible. It stands in line with the Bible, but I've received prophetic things that I couldn't make sense of. And then I can look back and say, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, how did I miss that? Because the prophetic is sometimes very purposely cryptic. Because God's plans and purposes, he gives us a little inclination, but they're beyond our understanding. They're beyond our ways. And so it plays right into God's supernatural plan. If the enemy and your enemies, if the devil knew, if other people understood what they were actually doing and how it was playing right into God's supernatural plan, they wouldn't be doing it. In fact, quite the opposite. They'd probably just leave you alone. Right? Because if they understood that whatever they were doing was playing right into God's plan, man, they don't want any part of that. So number one, whatever the enemy is plotting, whatever the government is doing, whatever other wicked people are doing, it's playing into God's supernatural purposes to accomplish his promises, to accomplish his will on the earth. And number two, God will go through great lengths to accomplish what he's promised you. He inconvenienced Joseph and Mary. A young poor couple. Now they got to travel all the way to Bethlehem. And she's pregnant. And, it's like, why am I struggling so bad? Why is everything so difficult? Because God is strategically placing them where he needs them to be. And then he's born. And then the angels sing. And the shepherds come. And then the Magi show up with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then Joseph and Mary have to go on the run, and they live in Egypt for a few years. Then they return home to Nazareth and just live their life. See, and it was in the struggle that they were going through, right, was all playing into God's purposes and plans. I don't understand how my struggles and how my challenges are all part of God's divine purpose for my life. And it's not just about me. We often think about God's will for my life and God's purposes for my life. But God's purposes are far greater than just me, are far greater than just you. My struggles are part of God developing me and positioning me and placing me where I need to be. There are times, and I'll tell you another thing. So I was in line, when I worked for Teen Challenge, I was in line to take the job of the assistant dean. And there's the program director. He oversees the men and boys programs. Then each one is run by the dean, and then there's an assistant dean. And I had seniority. I had the experience. And it was the assistant dean. He had taken a different role. And so the job was mine. If all I had to say is, yes, I want the job, it would have been mine. Well, I had felt like the Lord had prompted me at that time. I was just wrapping up college, my bachelor's degree in business communication. And I felt like he said, I want you to hold off on accepting that job as the assistant dean, and I want you to go and apply at this company. So I had 3 interviews. Everything was great. I thought, man, I was going to get into working for a public relations company. I thought everything went well. And then I didn't get the job. God, I obeyed you. I did what you said to do. I interviewed and things went well. And I thought this was going to work out. And I didn't get the job. And now I passed up my promotion. I passed up the opportunity to step up in the organization. There would have been a nice pay raise that came with it. And man, what in the world was that all about? I was really disappointed. Well, about 2 months later, the dean of the boys program comes across the hall to my office and says, listen, we're starting a new ministry school here for the graduates. And I'm looking for an assistant. And I would really like for you to apply for the job. I really think that you're the guy. I have watched you. I watched you do your job. I watched you from across the hall. I really, really think that you're the guy. And I got to interview a bunch of people, and I can't promise you that it's yours, but I really think that I really at least want you to apply because I think you're the guy. Well, I applied for the job, and I actually got it. And it was awesome because it was from there that I met the right people, began to make the right connections. I was right in kind of the lane of what the next step after that was. So I was there for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years with the ministry school when my wife and I lived in Lonsdale, Minnesota. And then we felt prompted to start attending this little tiny local church here in town. Because we had a heart for our community. Wherever God placed us, we had a heart. When we lived in Minneapolis, man, we had a heart for that city. I worked in the city. I ministered in the city. I ministered to my neighbors. We were involved in different things. And we were in a church in Bloomington and very active in urban and suburban ministry. And then we moved down here, and God had asked us to come and be a part of this church. And we did. And I started volunteering in youth ministry. And then I left Teen Challenge and came on staff here. And for how long was I? 8 years in youth ministry, I think it was. 8 years as youth pastor. And then I've been almost 9 years now as the lead pastor. But it was, God needed to stall me and to not take the job that I was in line for, to take the position that I really wanted, because it would have taken me in the wrong direction for where he was leading me. And had I taken that, I wouldn't be here today. And so God had to stall me to keep me from doing and taking something that I really wanted and that I was in line for. And so the whole point of this is that God's purposes and plans and ways are far above ours. And I don't always understand the purposes of God, why the struggle is there, why things don't always work out, why this, that, or the other thing, and why this person is acting that way, and why, because God is divine, and I have to understand, and we got to understand that God is divinely ordering and directing our lives. If that is true, and if we really believe that, then we got to cut the whininess and just trust that God is doing what he said he would do. And that God is divinely orchestrating and leading my life to accomplish what he's promised us. My friends, we've got to trust in the Lord, as Proverbs says, with all of our heart, and not lean on our own understanding. We have to acknowledge God in all of our ways, and he'll direct our paths and make our ways straight before him. God will take the wicked, evil plots of human government, and it plays right into his divine purposes. And likewise, that God will go through great lengths to accomplish what he's promised you and me in his word. And he will do it in a way that we won't be able to rob him of his glory, that we won't be able to take credit for it, that we won't come off as the one who's super smart and super anointed and super whatever. It's like, I don't know. All I know is that I was over there and I'm here now, and how the two of them came together, I have no idea. But God moved. Same with when I took over as the pastor. The church naturally had to go through a search committee and interviewed a number of candidates, myself included being one of them, because the church needed to figure out who the right leader was. And I wasn't even sure that it was me at the time. And so we went through this long process, and I did a couple of interviews, and it just, it just didn't seem like I was the right fit. No harm, no foul, whatever. It's fine. We want to find the right person. Well, through weird circumstances, it turned out that I was the guy. I was the one that God had called. And it just took us time to figure that out. And so I went from, not wanting the job. I was going to go back into doing evangelism and outreach. I didn't want the job. Then God said, take the job. And then I was told I wasn't I wasn't the guy that they wanted. And so, okay, whatever, that's fine, fair enough. I threw my hand in the ring. I obeyed God. That's all that mattered. God said to do it. I did it. Where it goes from here is out of my control. There's a lot of freedom like that in life when we have that kind of an attitude. To all of a sudden, you know what? We think that you're the guy. Oh, really? Because I was just busy making other plans with my life and praying. What? Now what? But God, God orchestrated circumstances and things to get me where I needed to be, to accomplish what he needed to accomplish, to fulfill all of the promises, because in Christ all of God's promises are yes and amen. And God will accomplish what he needs to accomplish, but he will not do it in a way that makes any sense to you, that will not make any sense to me. God's plans and purposes are beyond our understanding. So can you trust him? Will you trust him today? Will you stop trying to figure it out and just say, yes, God? You take him at his word. God, you said, you promised me, God, and I hold you to your word. Just as you expect me to obey your word, I expect you to hold your word, God. And I trust you, and I'm going to hold you to do what you said, but Lord, I also know that you're going to do it in a way, Father, that is beyond my understanding. Can you trust him today? That's what he wants. Will you trust him? And that's the word that God is speaking to you today. Will you trust me? Will you trust me? Will you trust me to do what I said I would do? And trust me to do it in a way that's far beyond your understanding. I'll close with this. The Lord spoke to my wife and I that we would have a daughter named Esther. She'd move the heart of the king and deliver many from death. And my wife and I could not have biological children. It was impossible for her to get pregnant. So we had a promise, we had an impossibility. And so we decided to adopt. And we prayed and sought the Lord and felt like that was the right thing to do. And we adopted our sweet daughter, Vanessa. And she is funny and goofy. She's also 13, and she was angry at me this morning because I had the audacity to use the bathroom. I know. The other day she got upset because I was in the kitchen and I was breathing. And that was just a source of annoyance to her. But she's sweet and funny, and she's 13. And oh boy. Well, anyway, we had talked with her birth mother. We'd met her birth mom when she was pregnant, and, talking about names or whatever. And we settled on the name of Vanessa. And just figured that one day God would give us an Esther, and if it's not her, then whatever. It'd be somebody else. We're just going to trust that God's going to accomplish what he said he would. And we love the name Vanessa. It's a beautiful name. It's a beautiful name. It's also a species of butterfly. Anyway, I got curious one day after she was born. She was maybe a year old. I'm like, I wonder what that name actually means. My name, Benjamin, is son of my right hand. Right hand in Middle Eastern Jewish culture is the hand of power, the hand of authority, the hand of strength, the hand of blessing. And so I'm like, I wonder what her name means. Well, Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, had a good friend named Esther Van Homrigh. And they called her Essa for short. And anyway, he took part of her last name in the pet form of Esther, which is Essa, and created the name Vanessa. And the name Vanessa is derived from the name of Esther. And God gave us our Esther in a way that we didn't expect. Her name, Vanessa, is derived from the name of Esther. So we got our Esther in a way that didn't make sense to us, in a way that, God has a way of doing things that are so beyond our understanding. And you're probably living in the fulfillment of many promises of God, but because you have a preconceived idea of what it looks like, you don't even recognize it. So, my friends, I love you. Trust him. Hold to his word. Ask him to open your eyes. Ask him to help you see that the fulfillment of the things that he's done, and to understand, and just to trust him in that process. My friends, if we're going to walk in dominion, authority, and power, and the fullness of what God has given us and put within us, we've got to learn to trust God, especially when it doesn't make sense.